Hey everyone, it's Marla. Welcome back to Twinstrology. I hope that you're all doing well. It's been a while since I posted anything. I gotta be honest, I've been flat out in this energy, so exhausted. And it's about all I can do just to keep myself going on a day to day basis. There are a lot of light codes coming in right now, and this is creating some restructuring on the cellular level, and that can be very draining on the body. I know that a lot of you are feeling this energy as well. So make sure that you get as much rest as you can, get to bed early. Drinking lots of water is really, really helpful right now. It can help cleanse things out of the body, and water can even help clear energetic blocks from our body too. So, they're definitely have been telling me to drink water and do some, maybe some light exercise as well to keep things flowing in the body. But I am here today because I wanted to talk to you about some information that I'm getting. I did have a vision a couple of weeks ago, and in that vision, I saw a white temple rising up out of the land, and then I saw the date 221. So I asked my guides about it after I saw it, and I'm just going to read you what they told me. I asked what it meant, and they said it is a wave of higher frequency energy. It is Solomon's temple. It represents the grounding of heavenly frequencies. It is a victory for the forces of light and the 144. You might associate it with Israel, but it is for all people. It is a call to return to God, to return to peace. It is a cosmic victory over the lower forces. So, yeah, they told me it was Solomon's temple. And I did kind of recognize it in my vision as that, even though, like, if you would have asked me what Solomon's temple looked like, I couldn't have told you. But Solomon's temple, remember, is in Israel. We might talk about that a little bit as we go further. There's a lot of different levels to what is going on here in this um, gateway. But yeah, they're saying that this is something very positive. And of course, it being a temple, it is something that's very positive. I asked what the energy was going to bring, and they said it is bringing a force of angels to guard the earth. There will be rumblings. The angels will create stability to stand against those that wish to create war and chaos. There are intensifications coming. Some of what is happening is in the Middle East. The energy will erupt there and circle the globe. It is important for light workers to hold the energy of love as much as possible so as not to fall into the darkness. So, going along with what I was saying about the energies being intense right now, some of that is the dark forces have been very active, and you have to really focus on keeping your energy field clear of the darker energy. So, every day I would suggest doing some kind of clearing work. If you need help with that, you can go to my meditation playlist. I would recommend either the 50-point cosmic cleansing or the violet flame meditation has something that can help right now. Um, and keeping ourselves clear is part of keeping the energies of the earth clear, especially with the violet flame one, because I do think that I talk about, as part of that meditation, cleansing the earth with the violet flame too. And so that can really support us in the changes that are happening within us and in the earth as well. Now, remember, Solomon's temple is in Israel, and there is conflict going on there right now. So I feel like in the coming time period, probably I'm going to give it the time period of the next 8 weeks, there could be some kind of news or information coming out of there. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be some kind of violence erupting. It could just be some kind of, like the word I'm getting is standoff, some kind of standoff. People aren't wanting to compromise, okay? And this is a time where us as light workers are trying to create peace. Remember, too, we're in a polarized experience here. So, whatever happens with the light, there's like an equal reaction with the dark. Think of the yin yang energy. And those two forces are always like balancing each other, if you will. So, when we have these activations that are bringing in light and higher frequencies, there's often a reaction from the other side. Some of that can be energetic as well. I think when they say it circles the globe, the energy will erupt there and circle the globe. I feel like that's energy, and it can be both energies. Um, whatever might show up has a challenge, but also these higher forces of light and the angelic beings that are coming to support us and support Earth right now by anchoring these higher frequencies that we may not be able to anchor yet through our own bodies. One of the things with this change, I feel, has to do with us becoming more advanced in our ability to create and to manifest. We've all been waiting, right? It's been so long in the energy of, well, this is coming, this abundance is coming, these changes are coming. All of those things are because of the alignment with our creator abilities. And we have to go through these changes, and that takes a little bit of time. But I feel like this is going to be part of a big shift that is anchoring change for us to be stronger in that. And part of that is because we are closing an old chapter of separation with God. And that's part of the importance of Solomon's temple. So these guardian angels, they're also going to help in enhancing our creator abilities. And yeah, my guide said February and March would be the strongest wave of this energy, but it is something that's going to be active long term. So the full um, change that this wave of energy is creating will take at least a year to anchor. But you guys know that when we're talking about these activations, that I'm always saying it's not something that is short term, but it has to ground and connect into us and create the changes in us, in our thoughts and our hearts. Solomon's temple was built by King Solomon, who was the son of King David of Israel. And God told David that he was to build a temple. But he said David couldn't build it because he had created too much bloodshed. And his son Solomon would be the one to build the temple. I feel like that's one reference here, is that this temple is meant to convey peace, and not war because of that one fact. Solomon did build the temple in Jerusalem, and it's today called Temple Mount. Solomon's temple was destroyed in about 500 BC by the Babylonians. It was rebuilt a second time, and that is the temple where Jesus preached. But then that temple was also destroyed. So Solomon's temple today doesn't exist in the physical realm except for the remains of a wall known as the Western Wall. Another thing about Solomon's temple that I feel is important to the incoming energy is this is where the Ark of the Covenant was kept. The Ark of the Covenant represents God's throne. The temple was built to house this. And the throne was like a representation of God being there among the people of Israel. However, where the ark was stored was closed off by a curtain. That area was called the Holy of Holies, and it had a curtain around it. And only on one day a year could the high priest and the high priest only go in there and worship at the Ark of the Covenant. So we had this kind of dual, this polarized energy there with that of, yes, God is here among the people, but God is also separated behind this curtain. And only the most holy man in the land is allowed to actually go there. And only then, once a year, to commune with God, if you will. So, this is another important aspect of removing that wall or that veil that separates us from God. And we've been talking about that a little bit because, especially for twin flames, and by the way, Solomon is a twin flame. His twin is the Queen of Sheba. But for twins, in order to fully clear the energy of separation from the twin, it's necessary to clear separation from God. Maybe a better way of saying it is when we feel like we're no longer separate from God, we understand that there's never any separation from the twin. So it's like this separation from God has to be healed first. And this is what Jesus came to heal. Jesus made several references to this. One of the references in the Bible is when Jesus is preaching at the temple. As I said, Jesus actually preached at the second Solomon's temple. They asked him what miracle he could do that gave him authority to preach there. And he said, "Tear down this temple and I will rebuild it in 3 days." Meaning, he is the temple. We don't need a physical space anymore to commune with God, but that space is within us. When Jesus was crucified, Mark, Matthew, and Luke all say the temple curtain was torn in two, meaning that veil that separated humanity from God was torn in two. It didn't exist anymore. However, humanity at that time did not take that lesson from Jesus. Instead, what happened was humanity made Jesus that high priest. This is talked about in the book of Hebrews. It's talked about Jesus being the high priest of Melchizedek, and he is the one that has gone through the curtain to God. And in that way, people that followed after Jesus or people that created the Christian religion interpreted it as now Jesus is our intermediary between us and God. Because, of course, we're all sinners and we're not worthy of being in the presence of God. But now, with this energetic shift and all the work that we've been doing on healing separation, we are embodying the Christ energies that Jesus was trying to convey to us, that there is no intermediary, that God lives within us. This is an important point for our shift into creator and manifester, because we have to understand that we are God. And we talked about this a few weeks ago when I was talking about Saint Germain and the electronic belt, and how we are, yes, we are an extension of God, but we are one with God. And so when my guides were telling me that this is an important alignment, what they meant was this is an important alignment for us with God, so that we can manifest from that vibration. It's the I am presence within. When we understand the I am presence and that is God working through us, that's what facilitates our ability to manifest. If we feel like we need some kind of intermediary, or if we feel that we're not worthy, that creates a block in our ability to think of ourselves as empowered creators. Instead, it might create a tendency towards more of a victim mentality or a sense of helplessness. So, this is a lot of what is shifting. Now, Jesus is said to be the new covenant, right? We had the Ark of the Covenant. Jesus creates a new covenant. And what I'm feeling about this energy shift is that light workers, and I think especially those that resonate with the 144,000, are now embodying this new covenant that Jesus anchored in by embodying the Christed energies. I mentioned the book of Hebrews talking about this. And one place in there, God says, I will put my laws in their minds and write them on their hearts. Remember, what's in the Ark of the Covenant is the 10 Commandments. These are God's laws. God is saying now, with the new covenant that we're embodying, that the laws will be written on our hearts and our minds. It's like we no longer need, let's say, the 10 Commandments, because the energy is coming from within. It's coming from being aligned with God. When you are aligned with God and you're not in a mindset of separation, you automatically act from a higher state of consciousness. You automatically act from a state that wants peace. Now, does that mean that we're all here right now? No, we're still dealing with judgments of others and that sort of thing. But this change is going to, what I'm getting is like up the ante on that, if you will. We are in the process of dropping a lot of programming and therefore dropping a lot of judgments against other things and people. And this is very important for anchoring the codes of peace on the planet. Because when we're holding judgment and when we're taking sides on certain issues, we're not creating peace. We're creating more separation, because, it's the important factor is learning to compromise and understanding that there's good and bad in everything. There's been rights and wrongs done by all of us. By the way, part of the activations we're going in to, or we're experiencing right now, are heart activations. Also, God goes on to say, none of them will have to teach his fellow citizens. That's something that I talked about recently from the I Am discourses and Saint Germain's information, where I know I've said this a few times, where the energy is changing so that it's not about us beating people over the head with our truth or teaching people that our way is the only way, but it's more about leading by example and by the frequency that we're carrying. by having the law in our heart. And I'm reading that the law is universal laws. By carrying that in our heart, we not only set an example, but our energy is able to shift the energy of people around us. Even further still, God goes on to say, I will not remember their sins and evil deeds any longer. The truth is, God has never remembered our sins and evil deeds, but we have. There's that is shifting now. A lot of what has created that separation is by feeling unworthy, by being labeled sinners. And of course, at times we do sin, but we have to not hold that programming that we can't change, that we can't be better. So, this program is shifting too. As I stated a moment ago, Jesus said, tear down this temple, and in 3 days I will rebuild it, meaning we are the temple. As I was getting this information, I realized that the QHHT session I posted a couple months ago that I did with a pair of twins, I actually called it Rebuilding the Temple. They were talking about being in a temple, and then that evolved to them understanding that their mission of creating this community was not about creating a space or a temple, but was about they themselves carrying this energy, similar to what Jesus said. So, seeing this temple, we have to remember it's not necessarily about a physical place, but it's about the energy and the frequency that we are carrying. And that can't be taken from us. If we are the temple, then God resides within us. That is the I am presence or the indwelling God. Another thing about Solomon's temple is that it was open to everyone. When the original temple was dedicated, Solomon gives a prayer where he prays to God that every foreigner that comes to the temple will be heard and that God will facilitate their prayers. And this idea is mentioned several times in the New Testament as well. Even when we talk about Jesus preaching in the temple, he goes on to say in the book of Mark, my temple will be called a house of prayer for the people of all nations. In Revelations, where they talk about the new Jerusalem, they say, I did not see a temple in the city, because its temple is the Lord God and the Lamb. The people of the world will walk by its light. But if we look at where Solomon's temple was originally built, Temple Mount, this is one of the most contested pieces of land in the world. And there's friction there between Jewish people, Muslims, and Christians. It's the holiest place in the world for Jews. It's the third holiest place in the world for Muslims. And obviously, it's very important location for Christians as well. And so you've got a lot of different people from all over the world, people of different religions and nationalities traveling there. But it's not easy to get around there. Now, I haven't been there, so I don't want to say too much about it, but there, of course, is conflict there. It's technically controlled by Israel, but Muslims are given control of the day to day activities there. But from what I read about the setup, it doesn't seem welcoming to everybody because of all the tensions that are there. And so I think there's a bit of that as well. And like, how can we find compromise and how can we find peace in this, area of the grid that's very sacred? It's really sacred to humanity because if we look at us on a soul level, no matter where you are in the world, you have probably walked that piece of land at some point in your soul's earthly journey. And in this way, it's very sacred. And yet there's, so much turmoil there. It's not great for the earth, for the grid, to have so much turmoil there. We have to kind of release judgment about the things that are happening there at the moment, because there is all this karma and there's all this energetic attachment to that location. And so we have to go through a clearing of the karmic cycles there in order to create peace. But I'm sure that you can all imagine the importance of that location being an anchor of peace for the world and the inspiration that that could create. So I think it's important for us to all just keep praying, keep sending the violet flame there, keep trying to come out of any states of judgment that we might be feeling from our own personal experiences, and ask for compromises to be reached. So, lastly, there's something about the Ark of the Covenant that's important to this shift that is not really clear to me 100% at this point. It's possible that the Ark of the Covenant is going to be found, and found as early as this year. Most of you will remember that when the temple was destroyed, the Ark of the Covenant was lost and no one knows where it is. You know, according to my guides, it does still exist somewhere, and at some point it's going to be uncovered, perhaps sooner rather than later. But they also said that the Ten Commandments are different from what we think, and that when they are rediscovered, it will not be what we think. Let's go back to the date again, 221, because the date after 221 is the 222 portal. And then 2 days after that, on February 24th, we have a Virgo new moon. And that is going to be on 224, 224, 224, 2024. So numerically, those are going to be important shift dates. But also, this energy is aligning with the eclipses. The first eclipse is on March 25th. The second eclipse is on April 8th. Easter is on March 31st. Good Friday is on March 29th, just a few days after the eclipse. And it's also Ramadan. And Ramadan goes from March 10th to April 9th. So the last day of Ramadan will be the day after the eclipse. So I feel like those two religious holidays are going to play a role. I mean, definitely, I always feel an energetic shift around Easter that kind of it symbolizes resurrection to us, and it is always a portal that holds higher frequencies of Christ energy. But yeah, it could be interesting with the eclipses this year. All right, I think I'll end it there. Thank you so much for listening. All the information about me is down below. Sending you all a lot of love and peace, and I will speak to you again soon.